doctors in the US are reporting an unusual surge in the number of pregnant Indian women, many on H-1B and L-1 visas, requesting preterm cesarean deliveries. This rush coincides with President Donald Trump's executive order ending birthright citizenship, set to come into effect on February 20th. With Trump being rather generous in signing executive orders, Indians on H-1B visas are worried sick and uncertain about their status in the US. Now, some are arguing some of these executive orders, including the one regarding birthright citizenship, is unconstitutional and will be fought in courts. To talk about what is likely to happen on this front, I am joined by Aman Kapoor. Mr. Kapoor is an American citizen and an important voice in this visa battle. Mr. Kapoor, we spoke a couple of weeks ago, and as expected, Trump's return has come with a major shakeup in immigration rules in the US. What are your first thoughts about his decision to completely eliminate the birthright citizenship?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. Uh, I would suggest that we go through the list of all the anybody who wants to evaluate Trump's President Trump's executive orders should actually go through the list of all the executive orders and then narrow down to the ones that they feel are most compelling or are most unreasonable or reasonable, and then evaluate based on how those executive orders would have an impact. In this case, specifically on the immigration space, the executive orders are wide ranging from starting from, of course, the undocumented and the wall on the border, plus Article 42 that was already in place in the first Trump administration, and birthright citizenship. So it and asking different countries to take back their illegals or people who are not legal in present, who doesn't have a legal presence in the US and have already gone through the court proceedings. You want to look at things holistically, and I would say that many of the changes that President Trump has made, they make sense. Majority of Americans agree with those changes. But then in any situation, it appears that there is overreach on certain aspects, and that's why there are certain lawsuits that are underway that have been filed by different state attorney generals. So now, which one anyone wants to look at, which specific executive order you would like to look at, that depends on how you want to proceed and how you want to take your position. I feel that many of these executive orders were long overdue and they should have been made by the previous administration. They were much needed. But then there are some executive orders that are going to get amended and reshaped as they go to the court proceedings.
Mr. Kapoor, how will his order refusing birthright citizenship impact Indians in particular?
Well, executive order takes effect immediately after the signature of the president. That's the nature of executive orders. So there are different ways to make changes to the system. One way is to go through Congress, where the Congress will pass the law and then put an effective date on when that law will take effect or when each subsection of the law will take effect. The other way to make changes is to go through the court system, and then the court will do a ruling, and that becomes a norm going forward, that how a certain law will be interpreted. The third way is where a president can sign an executive order, wherein as soon as the signatures are there on the dotted line, uh, the executive order takes effect. So essentially, President Trump has said that after 30 days of his signature of the executive order, there would be anybody who was born after that date will no longer be considered as a citizen of the United States due to the 14th Amendment, because uh, unless the child has at least one parent who is either a green card holder or a citizen. That's basically essentially what the executive order does. And this specific executive order will make sure that It is designed to make sure that people who are undocumented, who would not just cross over the border and and then have their children be born in the US, then they would be not subjected to the US jurisdiction. And to prevent that specific use case or scenario is how this is designed. Of course, the other aspects of it, there is a significantly large number of immigrants, especially from rather visitors from China who come in, and they have there's something called birthing centers. They go to different birthing centers in large cities. They give the birth of the children in the US, and then they after a few weeks they leave. And then due to their birth of the child in the US, they get passports or become US citizen, and that's also wrong. If you look at what President Trump has done in this executive order, one could argue that it is similar to what the law of India is, wherein at least one of the parents should be uh, Indian national. So for somebody to be born in India would get a US citizenship. But in the context of US, it is slightly different, and that's where the problem starts with the executive order, wherein the executive order also says that anybody who has been working in the US for as long as people are here, in the context of people from India, they are stuck in the green card backlogs for decades. And if somebody is already here for decades and their children are born in the US, then they would not get US citizenship, which seems like the way that the history has unfolded and the 14th Amendment has unfolded. That seems like an overreach, and that doesn't appear to comply with the law, the existing law. And so, any executive order that doesn't comply with the existing law, the Constitution, can be then challenged in the court. And that's what the different attorney generals of different states have already done. They've challenged birthright citizenship executive order in the court. And how it will unfold remains to be seen.
Now, Mr. Kapoor, there are reports that some pregnant Indian women on H-1Bs are approaching doctors for early C-section before the implementation of birthright executive order. What do you think is likely to happen in this matter?
Anybody who comes here on H1 visa, they already know that there is a massive green card backlog line. But nobody expected this massive earth shifting change, which is that now their children will no longer, who are born in the US, will no longer be able to get their citizenship. And that's a massive change. And we believe that that's not right, and it is not according to the 14th Amendment. And people who are going through this process, who are going to have babies in the near future, obviously it's a matter of big concern, and each person will make their own determination of how they want to deliver their babies. But I don't think that's a right way um, to do any medical procedure, because this thing has to get sorted out in the format that the problem was created, and it has to be sorted out by the courts. Um, we believe that there is going to be a correction, and subsequent new executive orders will be introduced to make this correction. As I can relate to what happened in the first Trump administration in 2017 started with something called travel ban for specific countries that would not give the data of their citizens when they travel into the US. Those countries, and that was actually a very broad executive order when it was first introduced, and then it was subsequently challenged in court. And then the travel ban executive order was then modified, and then subsequent new version of the travel ban executive order was introduced, and then that was also challenged. And then subsequently, a more refined version of the travel ban was introduced on a much later date. And then that travel ban, which was ultimately refined and improved upon, and could not be challenged anymore, and all the flaws were removed, which people were found it egregious. um, that was finally accepted. We believe that this will probably follow the same course of action, wherein there'll be course correction and there'll be correction in the way that the interpretation of the clause within the 14th Amendment is interpreted, which says subject to the jurisdiction thereof. And we believe that in time it will be corrected, and that it could be within next 1 year.
This is most certainly likely to impact plans of those who are planning to settle down in the US. How do you think they're going to deal with this? What are the possible options that you think that they can go for at this stage, or you would advise them to, at this point in time, just wait and watch?
Obviously, we absolutely believe that this would have an impact on people. They'd be more concerned about how they will be treated once that they arrive on the shores here, and how people will plan their lives around which place they want to go and contribute and provide their talent. Obviously, as President Trump is working on getting significant investments in high-tech fields. For example, yesterday there was an announcement of $500 billion investment in AI with the CEO of Oracle and SoftBank. But again, all those investments would be only go so far uh, if the workforce is there, if the talent and the workforce is there, and the skill set is there to make the best use of that investment. And so on one side, there is a significant investment on the high tech field, but on the other side, if the people who are talented, if they are turned away, then two policies don't reconcile. And we believe that after dust will settle down, things will start to look a lot better. And some of these changes, which right now are not appearing to be so friendly or fair, will finally settle down and get changed.
Do you believe such an executive order may end up harming both the US and the Indians in the long run?
I personally believe that in any fair and just system, it is not a competition between different people who are in different parts of the world, but it is that in any fair system, everybody wins. And if more talented people are able to come and contribute in the US, and then many companies make an investment around those people, then that creates more jobs for Americans in the US. It's not just what I believe, it's basically supported by a significant amount of studies and data. And so uh, once that the course correction takes place, eventually I believe that these changes will eventually help. There is obviously problem in the system. For example, if somebody's coming here as an undocumented and they have children who are born here, then obviously that scenario was not envisioned when the 14th Amendment was created, because it was fully focused on the way that it is written, fully focused on the problems at that time. Now, there are areas which are left unaddressed, and how those areas are to be addressed. American people have spoken. They have voted for President Trump when he said that he will make these changes. That means people in the country want those changes. Uh, but how those changes will also impact other group of people, that has to be um, tuned and modified, and make sure that all those scenarios have been taken into account. And so, obviously, there will be some change, and it was long overdue. And how those changes will eventually take place and settle down, and what will be the final, as I gave you an example earlier, where travel ban was finally there in the first Trump administration, even after a lot of opposition, because they were fine tuning, and eventually, they came up with a language that could not be challenged anymore. Likewise, in this case, there'd be improvements of what changes will actually eventually take place. And I believe that once those changes will take place, um, it will be fair for Americans as well as Indians and everybody else in the world.
Now, Mr. Kapoor, it's not just the US. Countries across the world have been implementing curbs on immigrants, from Canada to UK to Australia to New Zealand. Why is this suddenly happening across the world in the last few months in particular?
You see, there are many different theories out there. Um, and there could be different reasons for different countries. But if you look at the natural progression of how events have unfolded, I think once COVID had started and there was a shutdown of economies across the world, uh, there was pressure on the local economies in every country. And because of that inward pressure of every economy in the world, there was um, there was limited number of jobs after the economies opened up. Many businesses were closed down, and because of the more pressure inward, because of the shutdown during COVID, when the things have opened up, there is a lot more stress that the societies and the economies have not yet been able to overcome. And because of that stress, and one more thing, after COVID started to stimulate the economies, different governments had released a lot of funds that they printed a lot of money. Because of printing of the money in different economies, there's inflation. The prices have gone high of basic needs of housing, the renting, the food, and the vehicles and the gas. Everything has gone up, and so but the wages of people have not gone up. So there is a frustration amongst different populations across the world that they were able to afford things that in the past that they are no longer able to afford. And it is much easier for somebody to show up and make a point a finger at immigrants and say, well, those immigrants are the source of all your problems. And that's usually how things unfold, wherein the local parties in different countries, they show up and they make point fingers at immigrants, saying that, well, those immigrants are the source of all your problems. And when people are frustrated and they are looking to fulfill their own basic needs, and the wages have not gone up, but there's inflation in the marketplace, in the society, and number of jobs have reduced, and full recovery has not yet taken place. It is still on its way. So in that stressful environment, in different economies, it is easier to target immigrants, and that's one way to, that's one of the reasons why you see that all the most of these large countries which would otherwise depend on immigrants to come and contribute to their countries have taken a wrong turn, and and now you see what is happening. I believe that in time there'll be course correction again, and once things will settle down, and there'll be full recoveries after the after the after things will settle down, and there'll be more jobs, like more investments will be there, as President Trump yesterday announced. There'll be $500 billion investment, so that'll create more jobs, and then of course the question will be, well, where are these people? We need these people who would actually come and make the best use of that investment and deliver what is required from those investments. And so there will be course correction in time.
Do you think it's time for Indian students to rethink whether they actually want to go abroad for studies?
Education, as well as access to education, is something uh, that has incentivized students to come to US. And then one other aspect is that many people also come to US to study, because then they expect that after they complete their studies, there would be some job opportunity that will be there. But if that aspect is no longer in the play, then obviously students will look for other destination. And once that group of students will go to other destination, the revenue that is brought in from because of those students that help sustain the universities in America, that will also disappear, and it will substantially hurt the universities and the overall education system in the US. The So that's basically how you want to see this issue holistically, whereas one event will have an effect on subsequent event downstream. Now, as far as how each person will make the determination, it is their own decision. But obviously, if the ability to not be able to work, if the ability to not be able, if you take away the ability to work from students in the future, or or learn from the training after the studies, then obviously students will look elsewhere. It is believed that significant dollar amount is brought into the US, that helps sustain the American universities, significant number of American universities, and those American universities will be hurt severely if students from India, which is the largest number of foreign students who pay significantly higher fees, would stop coming to the US and if they look for other destination. And so this will have an impact overall on many different aspects of how the society will unfold, including how the universities will be able to sustain in the future.
Mr. Kapoor, the kind of uncertainty that exists amongst Indians at this point in time, I think that's here for a while. That's going to last a while. So we will keep coming back to you for more such interviews so that you can keep letting us know what's happening on the ground. But for today, thank you so much for taking the time for talking to us.